During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians.
The word Ukraine, referring to Ukrainian lands, first appears in a chronicle in the 12th century. In 1500, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, in a letter to the Crimean Khan, referred to Kyiv, Volyn and Podillia as our Ukraine. That is, the term Ukraine covers a large territory that extends to almost all of present-day Ukrainian state. In other words, we are not talking about any outskirts, but about the whole country. At the same time, the toponym Rus is used to refer to Ukrainian lands. The term Rus is rarely used to refer to the territories of present-day Russia. In the 17th century, the place named Ukraine was already present on maps, the same ones that Putin and his subordinates scrutinized not so long ago and didn't notice Ukraine. There is no Ukraine there. We know that these lands were simply part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and asked to be part of the Moscow Kingdom, and that was it. The map that Putin was shown by his henchman is a part of an atlas of Eastern Europe. It was created in 1674 by cartographer Guillaume Sanson. Its title reads, "Europe divided according to the extent of its principal states, divided into its principal provinces." Ukraine is present on this map. I did poorly at university because I drank a lot of beer. Central Ukraine, right bank and left bank, is designated as the land of the Kozaks, while Western Ukraine is called Black Rus, Russie Noire. But what is most interesting is that Putin's subordinate deceived him twice. And the great Russian state. Because on this map, Ukraine is present, while Russia is not. Why? Because at that time, the country with that name simply didn't exist. On maps, the future Russia was called Moscovia or Tartary. This is where Putin comes to one of the decisive moments in history. The Zaporozhian army, led by Hetman Bogdan Khmelnytsky, rebelled against Poland and established a military democracy, the Hetmanate on Ukrainian territory.
They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kyiv.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period, I'm losing track of where in history we are, the Polish oppression of Ukraine?
It was in the 13th century.
What is he talking about? Why 13th century? This is the 17th century, 400 years later.
When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so that Moscow took them away.
Actually, it is difficult to comment on this nonsense. Yes, Khmelnytsky wrote letters to the Tsar of Moscow, the King of Sweden, the King of Poland, the Prince of Transylvania and the Tatar Khan, and to the Turkish Sultan. Basically, as head of state, he was actively engaged in diplomatic correspondence. For example, during the war with Poland, he signed an agreement with the Muscovy, where he recognized the supremacy of the Tsar in exchange for military assistance and respect for Kozaks' rights and privileges. The promises were not fulfilled. In fact, Putin himself admits this.
And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland, which they called Eternal Peace, was signed. And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kyiv, went to Russia. And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in Poland.
Putin messed up the years. Again, the Andrusovo peace treaty between Poland and Muscovy was signed in 1667, but this is not the point. Realizing that they had been deceived, the Cossacks themselves began negotiations with Poland. And Moscow, just like now, started a hybrid war and then a full-scale invasion against Ukraine. However, it suffered a heavy defeat near Konotop. Unfortunately, disagreements between the Cossacks didn't allow this success to be consolidated, and the new hetman had signed an agreement with the Kremlin. again.
Under the rule of Catherine the Great,
Wow, how he jumped ahead for more than 100 years! And a lot of interesting things have happened during this time. For example, there were several Moscow-Ukrainian wars. The most famous one was when Hetman Mazepa of Ukraine united with King Charles XII of Sweden against Tsar Peter of Moscow. But they lost. Peter retaliated by organizing a genocide against civilians in Ukraine. The Kozaks' capital of Baturin was massacred on his orders, with an estimated 15,000 people killed. After that, Peter renamed his state, stealing the ancient name of Ukraine. Only then, Moscovia became Russia. And during this time, in violation of all agreements, Moscow was constantly reducing Ukrainian independence, using so-called salami slicing tactics.
Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west.
This is a complete lie. Again, the Black Sea region, the Azov Sea region and Crimea have never been not only Russian in the sense of Muscovy, they didn't even belong to Rus. The Golden Horde was here, and then the Crimean Khanate. In the 18th century, a small Cossack state existed on these lands under the protectorate of the Crimean Khan, the so-called Han's Ukraine. But yes, the Russian Empire under Catherine captured all of these territories with the help of Cossacks, and then Russians destroyed the remnants of Ukrainian autonomous statehood.